Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is the Push Pull Podcast, and I'm your host, HVAC Jake, and I got Julian with me here today. What's going on,
Hey,
buddy?
Jake. Well, oh man, lots is going on. What about you?
Yeah, man. The HVAC world right now is crazy. There's lots of stuff going on between podcasting and social media and apps and everything going on right now. It's good. We're just trying to spread some awareness and some news and kind of banter back and forth, and we talk all things HVAC here. So yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yes, sir. So we got a different one today, a little bit, Jake. So another whatever. I don't think this is solo. I think this is duo, but another episode, just you and I. What are we going to be chatting about today?
We're gonna go way back. We're gonna chat about our experiences and how we got into the trade, and it's been a good run, right? I've been in the trade now for 19 years, so there's quite a few things that have happened, and it's all good and bad. So it's gonna be fun. So we're gonna go right back to the beginning. So me and Julian, we actually went to high school together.
Yeah, shout out
Wesleyan, what?
Wesleyan. Wesleyan, best school in Niagara Falls.
Yeah, and we were fortunate enough to have a refrigeration class in our high school.
Two,
And I
two of them in like
remember,
Ontario. Yeah, so very
yeah,
rare.
there's only a few. I remember starting high school and hearing about refrigeration. And I was like, oh, they work on refrigerators. I'm like, I don't want to do that. So I
Yeah,
took everything else. I took electrical, wood shop, and machining, all these other courses because I thought they were like an appliance technician. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And then uh, throughout grade nine, I heard about what it was. It was like, no, it's like refrigeration. You're working on, coolers and comfort cooling and, refrigerators, fridges for businesses and stuff like that. And I was intrigued. I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. I never really even thought about it that way. And, not even thinking about the equipment that's at my house and stuff like that. And I was like, you know what? I want to try it out. I want to try all the trades and see, what's the best.
yeah,
And I'm a couple years older than Julian, and
yeah.
I think it was in grade 11, and I had to take the grade 10. That was like the entry level. So we ended up being in the same class, and we were also friends, outside of that class, and we ended up taking refrigeration at the exact same time, starting out in high school.
Hmm.
And we got to give a shout out to the Godfather,
Yes,
Mr. Galoin,
Mr. G.
Mr.
Yeah, our
G.
teacher. He's basically a stand-up comedian. I think that's what kept me interested because I had a bad experience with electricity at first because I'm just gonna say it, Mr. Fay in grade nine at West Lane. I mean to hate, but not great. I'm sure I was part of the problem. But anyways, once I took refrigeration, I can't remember actually why I picked it, Jake, but the way he taught me electricity, I was like, oh, that makes sense. I don't know what it was that was different, but and then yeah, he's basically a stand-up comedian. So even though it wasn't like easy for me and I like got it, right? Like at first, like it was some work for me to kind of get it. He was just so funny and he was just wild in the classroom. Like the stuff that would happen in the classroom was just hilarious. So he was the
Did
best.
he ever get you with trying to braze with the coat hanger?
I think he didn't do me. I think every like most people in the class, like in our class, because I took it for more than 1 year. Because after you took grade 10 when you were in grade 12, I think you
Grade
no,
11.
you took it in grade
I think
11.
I took it twice. I think it was I took grade 10 and 11, but I was in 11 and 12.
Okay, but yeah, yeah. So then you were, but I wasn't in grade 9, right? I was in grade 10. I thought when I took it, I thought that was started. You couldn't take it till grade
You're
10 because
probably right. It's all a blur.
you had to take general tech, which was
Grade 9.
brutal in grade 9, and
Grade
then
9
you
was
were
general tech.
who'd you have for general tech?
Big Bad Babini.
You had Bavney. That's funny.
Yeah.
I had Mr. Clark, and then like years after high school, I told you I had like a meetup with them. We went out to like the bar, and I left Yanks in Niagara Falls. Mr. Clark, Mr. Bavney were there. I think I met someone at Grand Central. I didn't pay my tab, and Mr. Bavney paid my tab. Good times. But that's cool. Right on.
Hopefully, we don't get them in trouble.
You had the B train. I'll have to not tag him or tag him. I don't know.
I've
Whatever.
seen those guys out, out and about in the falls. well after high school, and
Throwing
they're
lemons and
they're
stuff.
great guys. They're all great. It was high school was a lot of fun. We yeah, now that I think about it, I don't know. Might have been I might have only taken it once. I can't remember. I have to look back, but I took it in high school with Julian. It was a great class, and like you said, Mr. Galoin was a fantastic teacher and a comedian, and that's what made the class you wanted to go to class.
Hmm.
You weren't dreading going and stuff like that. It was fun, and you were learning about refrigerators and stuff like that, and also just kind of opened the world for me because I was like, wow, this is a crazy industry if you think about it. Everybody needs heating in their house, everybody needs cooling for refrigeration. Businesses all around the world, and I didn't know
Yeah.
how big it went from just learning the residential aspect of it to commercial, industrial, and all that stuff. And I was like, this is it. This is interesting, and you're going to have a job forever, whether you're working on the tools or teaching or working for a manufacturer or whatever it was. And I was like, this is it. Like I'm sucked in, and 19 years later, we're still into it. Yeah, it's fantastic. So
Yeah. So I guess that's weird. It was 19 years ago. Very sad. But so yeah, so you exited high school earlier than I did. So I was in high school. I did a co-op, which confirmed that I liked it because I got to see it in the field, got to see like hospitals and big buildings and like, okay, this is cool. And then yeah, so I was in high school for 4 years, then I carried on. But you were out of high school earlier. So what did you do carrying on after that?
yeah, so I graduated high school in 2007. And during that time, I applied to our Union Hall, Local 787. They have a training program there with the JTAC, and they had a pre apprenticeship program. So I applied for it, had to go through the aptitude test and an interview and all that stuff. And I got selected as one of the students. And I was super grateful because I'm like, this is going to be an awesome experience going up here. And it was, I think it was an 8-month program. It goes from September to March, into March.
Yeah.
And through that program, I got some basic training, basic refrigeration training, and also got my gas 3 license, which was a good credentials to start out in the trade because that's kind of what the employers were looking for back then.
Hmm.
And shout out to all my teachers there. They were like the best teachers ever, and they were, super engaged and just, friendly and all this stuff. And, Gino,
Yeah.
Paul, and Craig, and
Yeah.
Brian, those
Terry Bell
guys
too.
they were like a staple at the Union Hall. Those guys were just incredible at teaching their individual specialties and
Yeah.
getting you through your basic level and stuff like that. And I was fortunate enough to keep going there and going and then seeing the same teachers over and over. I did my full apprenticeship there, right? I did my basic, intermediate, and advanced, and yeah, it was fantastic. It was kind of like a community, and even the students that I went to school with, we became friends, lifelong friends. Like
Hmm.
one of our other
Luch.
podcasts, we had Luciano on here, and we went and did our pre-apprenticeship together,
Yeah.
and we're still in contact, and we're actually colleagues at Mohawk now,
Yeah, yeah.
which is incredible. So the trade is huge, but at the same time, it's so small, right? You get to network and you meet people all over, and yeah, it's just been an amazing journey. So
Cool. Yeah. So, I mean, another honorable mention of teachers at the 787. I ended up doing training there too. Brian Storkey. He's like the master of brazing welding. Also knows everything else, but that's what I mostly learned from him. And yeah, just I guess so like a mirror image of what you just talked about. When I was finished high school, I took a pre-apprenticeship at Mohawk College, which was we're gonna have him on the podcast next week, actually. Kevin Connolly created that program, I think around 2000. Yep, KC. I think he created it around 2007 or something like that, and then it was implemented. I was in like the first or second year of it. No, he must have created a little later. Anyways, I graduated in 2011. So it was a 1-year program. where you went over basic refrigeration cycle. You had a shop class. You learned sheet metal. So I learned I didn't like sheet metal and bleeding, the dark side
There
of
was
the
no
trade.
safety protocols back then, right?
I would use gloves, I guess, but then you can't feel what you're doing. I don't know, whatever. So then, gas three, ODP, all that stuff. So yeah, that was my post-secondary education, and then like I later came to join the Union Hall and do some training over there with Jake. But yeah, I guess as a method of going back and forth. So you could talk about the end of your, post-secondary training and then where you went from there.
Yeah. So after my post secondary training, well, kind of during, I was applying to some companies, and the first one that got back to me was Johnson Controls, and they set me up for an interview, and I went in, did the interview, and they were, ready to, you know, hire me on and kind of start my journey there. And it was a great place to start because they allowed me to work with some individuals there. When I first started, I was working at a building in St. Catharines, and they had an on-site operator there, and he kind of overseen the building, working on the automation and the chillers and some of the air handlers and just different things. And if something majorly went wrong, then he would call in one of our technicians and they'd service it. But he would kind of navigate the whole thing. So if someone was cold in an area, he'd kind of modify the temperatures on the control system and all that stuff. So I got to work with him for basically 4 months straight, and it was kind of a
Yeah.
nice, easy way into the trade. Some days there wouldn't really be much going on, and he'd be like, "Okay, here's your job for the day. Go down to Home Depot, get a paint can and a paintbrush, and you're painting the
Oh
chiller.
yeah.
We're gonna make
I've
this
painted
place look
lots.
spotless." And I was like, "Yeah, man, whatever. I'll change light bulbs. I'll sweep. I'll do anything. I want to
Yeah.
get. I just want to keep this place nice and clean." And yeah, that's what I did for 4 months. It was great. Close to home. I live in Niagara Falls,
Yeah.
so it was good. Kind of commuting back and forth there, and then yeah, I think that was probably my probation period.
Yeah.
And after that probation period, they're like, "Yeah, you're doing good. You're motivated. All this stuff." They're like, "We're gonna get you a truck." So I got a truck and a phone and a fax machine. This is
Oh,
going way back, right? We had to fax in
nice.
our work orders and or our timesheets, well, and work orders too.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was good. And went out and bought a nice road map because there was no GPS back then, and it was like, okay, here's your first service call. Head up to Burlington. And I was like, oh, I've never been to Burlington before. So get
Yeah,
out the
yeah.
map book and you're mapping it out. And you finally get
Oh my
there.
gosh. That's so hard. I had terrible sense of direction. All my like early like go to this place was like the most stressful. It was more stressful than any of the work. I'm like, oh man, before like GPS on phones, that was a rough go.
Oh yeah, yeah, man. So that was kind of my introduction to working, and I'll pass over to Julian, and he can kind of do his introduction after his post secondary.
Yeah, man. So, after pre-apprenticeship, what was it 2011? Like I worked for a handful of different companies, like in and around Niagara towards Toronto, until I finally landed on one during my first year apprenticeship, where it was great with Simcoe Refrigeration. So there's a big project in Hamilton, actually. So that's why I ended up moving from Niagara Falls to Hamilton. Maple Leaf Heritage Plant. It's like the third biggest food plant in North America by horsepower still, as far as I understand. Maybe that's a complete lie. I recently found out the American food plants are way bigger. So it's the second biggest one in Canada, anyways, as of today. I can say that. So yeah, yeah, started out there, did a bunch of construction and worked in service for a period of time, worked running construction projects for a period of time. So at Simcoe, I went from being a first year apprentice to a mechanic. So it was great. And that's where I kind of, found that I really wanted to do industrial refrigeration. So, um, I thought in high school I wanted to be like an industrial electrician, and then I turned out I got away from the dark side and went to refrigeration. And I remember Mr. Galoin, our high school teacher, saying that it's really hard to do specifically refrigeration. I didn't know what that meant then. I'm like, okay, that sounds like a thing. So later, when I was lucky enough to do that, um, yeah, I appreciated it. So it was kind of a cool thing. I'm glad that project existed. I'm actually going there next week, back there to meet their chief and talk about some stuff. So it's cool to go back to places you've been, as you know, Jake.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, this trade is you network, and maybe you worked at a facility and you got along with the operators or the chief or anything like that, and you never know when you're going to go back. Right now, you're doing some training and you get to go do site visits and stuff like that, which is super cool. So
Yeah, I love it. Just thinking how to progress forward with what happened in our HVAC journeys. So maybe if you want to take it through, I know there's a lot of steps, but kind of your journey through everything at Johnson Controls, and then whatever transitioning into the next part of your career, and I can do the same after.
yeah, for sure. So I got hired on at Johnson Controls in 2008 in April. And like I said, I did that little probationary period where I was at that job site there in St. Catharines. And then I got into a truck. And then I really started my apprenticeship. I signed my agreement and all that stuff. And they had me kind of work with technicians as I went along. And, I worked with a lot of good technicians that worked on all different types of equipment from, you know, general building stuff and air handlers and to rooftops and heat pumps and chillers and stuff like that. So I kind of worked on a whole bunch of different stuff. And early on in my apprenticeship, they needed to brush the tubes on a condenser on a chiller. So apprenticeship's job is to brush the tubes. So
Yeah.
you'd load up your truck in the winter. You got the tube machine, water hoses, your full rain suit because you're getting wet.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you did all winter. And it was a good entry into the chiller world because they kind of leave you alone. They said, here's all your sites, and you're going to go there. You got to isolate the water, drain down the chiller, and brush the tubes, tidy it up when you're done. And then you're kind of on to the next one. So it was kind of a mix of that and working with mechanics, which was great because the mechanics would kind of be doing their chiller service in the winter, and you could kind of follow what they're doing and see, what they're doing and stuff like that. And then the odd occasion they would switch roles and they'd be like, I'm going to brush tubes today.
Yeah.
You're going to do my service. And if you need some help, then, call me over or whatever. So it
Yeah.
was good that way. And then I actually got put on call really early on in my apprenticeship. I was a
Hmm.
second year apprentice, and it was like being thrown to the wolves, literally,
Yeah.
kind of by yourself, and you're figuring out. You have some friends that you can call, right? Your colleagues and stuff like that, but you're really kind of on your own. And it was good and bad. Like there's some stressful days that were crazy, getting called out late at night, through the night, or in the dead of the winter, up on the roof when it's snowing. Just depending on which customer we're working on. And it was yeah, it was crazy, but it was good. It was a good
Hmm.
experience. It really pushed you to do your job and try and figure it out. And
And I remember too, because you got started, Johnson, when we were so young, and everyone we hung out with, we'd just be like hanging out or something. We'd be like, I don't know, playing music, and you'd be like, "Oh, I got a service call." And you'd be like, okay. And it was just weird. Like you had this big, crazy responsibility. Like a cop wouldn't like to hear this, but I always like in my head, I'm like, it's crazy because you're like a police officer. You're like waiting around and you got to go do some stuff, right? Like I don't know, it's pretty intense.
yeah, I was young when I started too. Like I started at Johnson Controls when I was 18. So
Yeah.
I was I kind of want to tell this story because it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
So I was 18 and I wasn't even able to have a beer at the bar yet. So
Yeah.
a couple of guys were like, "Hey, we're gonna meet up and we're gonna go for a beer." And I'm like, "I'm only 18."
Yeah.
I can't, but maybe if we go to your place where we're like, don't worry about it. We know this little establishment here that won't be a problem. I said,
Yeah.
all right. So we go and meet up, and sure enough, yep, we belly up to the bar and 3 pints of Bud Light.
Oh
And,
yeah.
had a good time.
It's a dream at that age. But you've always had the beard going, right? Like I couldn't grow a beard if I had a gun to my head. I can't grow facial hair, and I think you've been able to do that since you were a young man.
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough to have a little bit of facial hair to give not give away my age. So,
That's it.
but yeah, that was fun. And then, well, shortly after that, I turned 19, so it wasn't an
Mhm.
issue then. But
Yeah.
yeah, like I was on, I think I was on call like young, like really young, right? And we're just hanging out and being kids. Like obviously we're adults at that point, but still having fun and just doing whatever. And then yeah, getting a call late at night and gotta go. And I've been pulled over out in the work truck late at night too,
Yeah.
and they typically think you're out doing something that you're not supposed to be doing.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, I'm on call. I'm working tonight. I was up at a facility. I'm on my way back, or whatever. And they're like, have you been drinking tonight? I'm like, absolutely not. I was working.
Yeah,
So,
but you can be more intoxicated from being exhausted than you ever
oh
could
yeah,
be. You driving
oh
around
yeah.
like that's the job. It's like it's a
I,
wild job.
I got one crazy on call story. So
Yeah.
I was working in Hamilton that day, and I drove home at the end of the day, like a normal work day. Got home and pulled in the driveway. Phone's ringing. You got a call. I had to go to Milton or something like that. So I'm like, okay. So I headed back up to Milton, got that service call done. I can't remember what it was. It was probably like a
The
rooftop or
jail.
something like that. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't the jail. And I get back home again, and I'm like, okay. It was like I don't know, 10 o'clock. Just getting ready to settle down. Just get into bed. Boom, get another call. It's in
Mhm.
Milton again. This was at a mushroom farm, and I was like, I gotta go. There are chillers down. So I headed back up there, and I think on the way up, I went through McDonald's drive-through just to get some food or something like that, and
Nice.
started working. I got there at like 12 o'clock at night, or probably later, and the chiller was down, and I think it was the inlet guide vanes actuator motor that failed.
Yeah.
And luckily, that chiller has the exact same actuator that's for the uh, what's it called? The ring that's in the compressor. There's a name for it. The VGD, the
Okay.
variable geometry diffuser. That's basically a capacity controller as well as a device to prevent surge.
Hmm.
It's not a necessity; it's an accessory. So I was like, you know what? We don't need that right now. I got to get this chiller back online. So I took the actuator from there and I mounted it where the inlet guide vane actuator was.
Nice.
And it took a while because I was just trying to swap it out and get it going and get the chiller up and running and stuff like that. And worked till the morning. And I was driving back, and I stopped back at the same McDonald's. I got breakfast,
Yeah.
and then I took a nap in the parking lot because I was so tired. Like you said, you
Yeah.
could get, you're more intoxicated on lack of
Yeah.
sleep than you are when you're drinking. So
Yeah.
took a nap in the car or in the work truck and woke up and then drove home. But
Hmm.
yeah, that was a crazy night. Then I called in and I said, I'm not going in that next day. But
Yeah.
yeah, on call sometimes it's crazy like that. Sometimes you don't get any calls. Sometimes it's crazy and busy and random. But yeah, that was one funny experience I had where I worked out all night. So
Yeah, I believe you called me a couple times during that when you were driving. We both were driving more. We still drive. We'd call each other pretty regularly, being like, "Guess what I'm doing? Guess what you're doing?" And
we were
um,
also doing a check in to make sure we're still alive.
making sure, yeah, checking with your buddy, right? You only have so many guys who you're close with in the trade or
Yeah.
whatever. But I do think on call is like just yeah, as a refrigeration mechanic training to have a kid. My daughter's gonna be 5 months soon. Your daughter's a lot older, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
like middle of the night, same thing. You think you're sleeping? Guess what? Your kid wants to do something. Service call. Time to take care of your kid. And then you got to do the same stuff the next day that you're gonna do, just like being on call. So there you go,
Oh,
training.
buddy. You're going to be on call for the next couple years straight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now that my daughter's 4, I feel like she's, has a good sleeping routine. And even if
Yeah.
she wakes up in the night, we tell her just crawl into bed with us and
Yeah.
just don't wake us up, right? And most of the time she doesn't. There's the odd time she does, but yeah, being on call definitely trains you to be a father.
Yeah. But no standby pay. That's the problem.
Oh yeah, yeah. You actually get paid in negatives.
Negatively.
Yeah,
What?
negative pay.
Yeah, you negative pay.
Once you have a family, all your money's gone.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Um, Trying to figure out where we were. Yeah, so that was your on-call experience and everything like that. So you could talk forever because you got tons of stories from Johnson, but how from, you know, starting at Johnson to where you came to the end and transitioned your career, how did that transpire?
So yeah, I did my apprenticeship at Johnson Controls. It was the only employer I worked for, but I was grateful of all the diversity that I got to do there. Right, I got to work on so much different equipment. I got to, working for a manufacturer was great because I got to see, a lot of commissioning of new equipment, and there was, fantastic training programs internally where they would train you on this equipment. And any training opportunity that came up, I was trying to jump on it because A, it was going to make my job easier, and B, knowledge is power. So it was great doing all that. And um, I don't know. I guess I was just getting busy. The longer you're in the trade, I find like the busier it gets, which isn't a bad thing. And I just wanted to change, really. I
Mhm.
think, just working at one company, most people I've worked at a couple companies just to kind of get the feel for it. And yeah, I was kind of ready for a change. So I was sort of kind of looking for another employer to, try out and see how it was, and, a different way of working and stuff like that. And Julian at the time was working at Mohawk.
Yeah.
And we're going to go through that. When you got hired on there, it was like monumental. And but I was like, I'd never even thought about teaching before, really, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
And um, one day, actually, we met up at Julian's house for a poker tournament. And
Okay.
another colleague of mine that I used to work with at Johnson Controls, who's working um, at Mohawk currently
Yeah.
as well, Chris Soper.
Yeah.
Um, he's like, yeah, man, they're always looking for part-time people. And I'm like, well, how do I apply? Like, there's nothing online for, applying for part-time. Nothing's posted or whatever. Like, don't worry about it. We network, and we're going to get you some emails and contacts internally. And they like that because they'd rather have someone that's, a
Referral.
reference than just
I
some
referred
random
you.
person.
I'll
Yeah.
take that
So,
credit. Screw
so,
Chris.
so Julie, no, the only reason I mentioned Chris is because he was part time there
Oh
at this.
yeah.
He was part
At that
time,
time.
and he's like, "You should work part time." And I'm like, "Well, what
Yeah.
does that involve?" They're like, "Well, you help out like in the labs, or you'll teach like one theory class or whatever it is." And I'm
Mhm.
like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." Like I don't know if full time would be something I want to do, but I'd be definitely interested in helping out in the shop, one day a
Yeah.
week or whatever, right? So, but yeah, Julian gave me the referral, and
It's all good.
I'm like, yeah, I'll check it out. So I ended up getting having a meeting with Mohawk, and they were interested in having me on. And I was kind of just going to make a transition. So I also had this other crazy idea of a midlife retirement, and I kind of
Nice.
toyed with the idea for like a few years. And because you don't want to talk about it, but I've seen many people, especially people in the trade, they get the retirement and then they stop doing stuff and they get sick, and then they don't get to enjoy their retirement.
Yeah.
And that would just be, I don't know. Like I remember even when I first started out as an adult, like, everyone's like, oh, you got to save for retirement, all this stuff. I'm like, you know what? It's a long ride, and you got to enjoy the ride. You got to get there first, right? So
Yeah.
I had this idea. I'm like, what if I do a midlife retirement and enjoy my time? I just had a daughter. Life was great. I was still active and fit, and I could do things. and take a few years off or something like that, or maybe do a little bit of teaching or whatever,
Yeah.
and then work till the end. Because when I'm 65 years old, I don't think I'm going to want to go out kiteboarding on the water if I'm not most physically fit. But
Yeah.
right now I'm good to go snowboarding or all this stuff right now, and then when I retire, maybe I'm not able to do that. But anyways, I don't want to think about that too
Cool.
far. But
Yeah.
that
Pick
was
your
kind of
brain about
my
that.
big overall idea I had. So I ended up just up and quitting my job at Johnson Controls in May of 2022. And I was slated to teach at Mohawk part time in September of that year. And I kind of did take a little bit of a break. I took about 4 months off
Hmm.
and just enjoyed my time. I had a bunch of money saved anyways. I'm like, you know what? I have a license. I have, a good resume, all this stuff. I'm sure I can find another job. So I wasn't too concerned about it. And I had already spoken to a couple employers as well, and they were willing to, possibly have me on or whatever. And I ended up
Yeah.
going just teaching at Mohawk part time, and it was great. I enjoyed it a lot because I'm still trade related. I didn't feel as burnt out as I was before, and I ended up sticking it out there for a year and a half as part time, and an opportunity opened up for full time, and I applied, and I got hired on full time there. And honestly, it was like the perfect transition out of the trade into a teaching position, and I feel like I didn't miss anything. Like I didn't, whatever. I didn't like get out of the trade. I'm still in the trade and just as active, if not more involved now, being outside of the tools.
Yeah.
Trying to do this podcast here and just
Yeah.
talking
Here we
about
are.
our experiences and teaching and putting stuff out on YouTube and educating and my students. Man, it's the most rewarding feeling being a teacher when the students, the light bulb goes off and when they just get a concept and it's like you help them to get there. It's
Mm.
so much more rewarding than anything that I've done anyway. So it's been a really cool ride so far. So
Yeah, that's cool, man. It's been wicked. And then like you mentioned too, like a transition from working in the field to like a teaching opportunity is really great and rare actually. There's usually a lot of steps between that. So it was cool to see you do that. And then I had a similar experience too.
well, Julian's road is a little bit different than mine, um, but nonetheless, I think I props to you, man. You have surpassed me, I believe, with just on the different level. You're just diverse. Um, Diversity in the HVAC industry right now is
Yeah.
unbelievable, and I'm so proud of you because like I remember like you were like trying to come up with me, and it was
Yeah,
great, right?
yeah.
And then like I feel like you're networking now and the things that you're working on now, it's like it makes me happy that we're up where we are.
I
So
appreciate it, man. And you got Jake's the guy who's good at everything. So I mean, your stories of, students' response to you, they surpass what I've done. It's something Jake's a Jake's a super likable guy. But yeah, so um at Simcoe Refrigeration had a bunch of great experiences. One thing I wanted to mention, like Jake was talking about colleagues and mentors, what I saw from guys in the refrigeration and HVAC trade is people who are passionate about what they did. And I would say some tradespeople are like weird, or you get like the guy who's like super sketchy, and you're like, who is this guy? It gives tradespeople a bad reputation. I don't want to name names of other trades, but in general, like refrigeration mechanics were just kind of like cool guys who were like normal and they were good role models. And I'm like, oh, okay, like this is what it's like to be a tradesperson. That's kind of neat. So, people come in, they're educated about their job, they're good at it, they're very skilled. So yeah, through working in industrial refrigeration, I got to be part of a lot of really big projects. I did things from painting for months on end to being part of critical lifts that are extremely dangerous, that are really calculated, where there's like, I don't know, 5 or 10 people involved, giant cranes, a lot of service procedures of huge pump outs moving thousands of pounds of ammonia. like retrofitting systems, replacing components that are just large. So yeah, the industrial world's really cool. And then got to do, some conventional refrigerant stuff too, like rooftop units, coolers, freezers with like conventional refrigerants, non-ammonia. So yeah, did on call also like Jake mentioned, did maintenance, did construction. So a good mix of all of it. And then yeah, so I was at Simcoe from 2013 to 2017. Transitioned to working for Carmichael for a couple years, 27 to 2019. And then I ended up having carpal tunnel syndrome, and I think I've had it since I was like 15, which is weird. I guess bad genetics that way. So yeah, I was to the point where I'd be like in bed at night in like maybe 2017, 2018, and I'd wake up yelling and my arms would just be in crazy pain. And I'm like, oh, maybe it was like just a super hard day at work or whatever. And I'd be icing them. I didn't know what was going on. But yeah, it turned out that I had carpal tunnel syndrome, like a 60-year-old man. And because of the nature, especially of industrial refrigeration, like whatever you're doing, construction, everything's huge. Everything weighs a lot. Even service, right? You got to go do a service call. You're not just like got a terminal screwdriver. You got like a giant wrench and you're pulling on something. So specifically what I was doing in the trade was hard on my body. And shout out Dr. Sutka in Toronto. Toronto's got the best doctors. And he basically told me, like, if you continue down the path you're going, you're going to become permanently disabled. So you need to change what you're doing. And that was a tough pill to swallow in like 2018, because all I wanted to do is keep being a refrigeration mechanic forever. Like, if that never come up, I'd still be out there turning wrenches, like, whatever. So,
Yeah, that's a crazy thing to hear at, a young age like that. It really kind of shakes you up a little bit. And
yeah. Yeah, it
then
was.
you had to shift
um,
gears and kind of, change your direction, I guess. So
Yeah, so like I'm 33 now. I guess that was 2018. So I was basically like, yeah, 26, 27 years old. I think I just turned 27 where it like got real. And then yeah, so I had the surgery. I'll try to show my scars. They're not super easy to see on the webcam. On both of my hands at the same time. There's my it's whatever. That's like
we'll have to dub in scar tissue by the Red Hot
scar.
Chili
No, this
Peppers.
great idea, yeah. Now this one, it's terrible to do. Anyways,
I
the
can
one on
see
this
it.
hand, this one, try to point to it. That suture right there, when that one healed and I saw it, like I was like I almost passed out when I looked in the mirror. So I got both hands done at once because I wasn't gonna have the surgery twice. I went back to modified duties at Carmichael, and the telling sign is like if your symptoms come back or not. They all came back, which meant that what I was doing wasn't gonna work long term. So that was stressful, right? Like I just bought a house the year before and I'm like, okay, what do I do now? Like so then like, thinking about project management, sales, all that stuff, like things that I thought I could do. And lucky enough, there was a part-time position at Mohawk. So I started doing that. And then I was still working at Carmichael, and within a few months of working Mohawk, a full-time position came up. I applied for it and was hired in like the summer of 2019. I remember we were driving to your bachelor party when I got the call, and we were like, "Yeah."
That was the story I was waiting for. Yeah.
Yeah, we
I
were
remember
driving
being
up
on the
there.
400 going north, and Julian's getting a call from the dean or the associate dean or someone. And me and Dan had to be quiet in the back, and he took the call like a professional, and he got hired on. And then we hung up and we celebrated. It was like, yeah,
Yeah,
you got into the college. It's like at that time, it was like monumental. I was like, this is crazy. You got into like a college teaching position, like that's lifelong. Like you're good to
right.
go, right? Like it's to be a professor, I was like, this is like that's like the end goal, you know.
Yeah,
And it was crazy that you got hired on there. I was so happy for you.
thanks, man. Yeah, so like clarify, that's what they title a full-time teacher at Mohawk College is a professor. That's how it works in Ontario and Canada. I know some people get up in arms about that because we didn't go to university, obviously, but that's what they call it. So, yeah, I mean, with Jake's transition into teaching, it's just as impressive or the same as mine. But Jake's kind of good at everything, and where I was at, I was kind of up against the wall because I'm like, I got to stop using my hands right now or I'm screwed. So that worked out good. Yeah. So. But like with Jake's story, he had so many more years, like the timing, maybe we weren't clear about it, of like trade experience before he got into teaching. So like the way you said it is like you didn't miss anything by the time you got into teaching. And then that was kind of the difference between the timing I got in to you. So that's kind of like
Yeah,
my
because I started a little bit earlier than you, I guess, right? So, and I kept working past the time you were in the college. So I had like 14 and a half years. Um, well, actually, it's just over 14 years, 14 years, let's call it, and of experience at the company. And then I got into teaching. So Julian didn't have quite as many years in the field, but
yeah.
his experience again was different because he got to work kind of specialty in one avenue, working on industrial and very proficient in that, project managing and stuff like that. And um, yeah, it was just a different experience, a different run. But now I'm working at Mohawk, and I got hired on full time in March last year in
Hmm.
2024. So it's coming up on a year soon, which I'm grateful to be here, and we got a great team over here at Mohawk, and like Julian said, yes, I have the professor status. I didn't go to university to get a professor degree, but with my 14 years of experience
Yeah.
and my credentials and stuff like that, they allow us to teach at a college, and it's great that opportunity because I honestly never thought about being a professor because of that. You think you have to go to get a master's or a PhD or something like that to become a professor. So it wasn't, now that I think about it, it definitely would be something that I would entertain and go do. But at this time, I'm able to teach and stuff like that. So who knows what the future brings? I've talked about, education and continuing to educate yourself and stuff like that. I would be open to going to school as well to get, more knowledge and stuff like that. And it's funny teaching now at the college, going teaching the apprenticeship. Uh, I'd like to go back and do the whole apprenticeship again because
Yeah.
there's always things that you're gonna miss, and you know we don't know everything, but we're resourceful enough to find the information, and that's how I navigate teaching. Is I don't tell my students that I know everything. I said it's okay to not know everything, but I can get you the right answer. I can be resourceful or navigate it too, because teaching is it's different than knowing the content. You have to deliver it correct. And if you just kind of try and wing it, or you're trying to deliver content, or you're a student asks you a question and you're trying to fumble through it, I feel like that's not the best response to it. I'd rather find the right information and
Yeah.
give them kind of a detailed explanation of how I got there. Even so, as far as the teaching goes, like I just try and kind of be on their level, right? Like I want to be personable, but I'm also going to be the authority, right? Like I'm the one that's calling the shots, but
Yeah.
I'm not to the point where like everything is it's cut in stone, right? Like there's some things it's like, well, okay, you got there differently than the other student, and it's like, okay, you still understand the information. How you got there is going to be different, right? So I'm flexible that way, right? Like obviously, if
Mhm.
stuff's not completed or not submitted or whatever, then that, there's an issue there. But if it say a diagram is drawn differently, or they creatively found a different way to get to the solution, I'm like, that's great. I'm like, you actually understand the information instead of just memorizing the answer, right? So,
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's way more valuable to have an understanding of it, right? And that's why I'm big on in my classes too, like drawing things out, writing things out in your own words, drawing things differently than how I did, drawing things multiple times. Like that's how you get the knowledge right there and get comfortable with it.
oh yeah,
So
yeah. I tell all my students to draw everything out. Like, I don't know, you're working on, a single phase motor or whatever. Just draw it out. Draw a little picture of it.
yeah,
Draw the readings that you get, and you're going to be able to interpret that so much easier than trying to think about it in your head, or whatever. Even trying to figure out the temperature of a box or something like that. Draw a little evaporator, draw the TX valve, draw your temperatures and pressures where they are. You can verify what kind of TX valve you have, or
Mhm.
maybe got internally equalized, externally, draw it out or something like that. It's really going to help you um, navigate that question or that information.
Or just replace the TX bell. That always fixes everything.
Yeah,
Then the board,
that's
then
the
keep
the going joke, right?
like an auto
Always the
mechanic.
TX valve.
Yeah, so yeah, kind of the last part of my journey goes from when I was working at Mohawk College for a couple years. I I didn't get as much field experience as possible, right? So once I got to the point where like I wasn't going to lose my job because I was so bad at teaching, once I'm like, okay, I can do this, I'm like, I didn't really get enough time in the field because I worked basically like 6 years, just 6.5 years in the field. I didn't get enough time to have a lot to contribute to the classroom at the end of the day after I, learned how to teach. So I wanted to get back into the field to get my hands back on stuff and, add more value. So I guess it was 2022, I started working at Continual Energy in Toronto, running a production shop. So we made test refrigeration equipment like compressor test stands. We made some R&D equipment, like made stuff for the first time, tested it, operated it. Yeah, I started working on manufacturing heat pump equipment and heat only refrigeration equipment. Around the same time, I started doing some teaching also for refrigeration operators for RC Mechanical. So I got the sweater on today, so good times. Um, and then yeah, so the beginning of last year, 2024, like a sister division of Continual Energy started called Archeat, which was a production facility. So I moved over there to a different shop as the production manager. Um, and then worked doing that up until November of last year. And then I resigned to that position. It wasn't the right fit for me anymore. And this is winter of 2025. I don't know when this is going to come out, but so besides doing these podcasts with Jake, still doing teaching for RC Mechanical. I have my own HVAC incorporated business, Finbow Inc. And then the other thing that I've been doing recently through that is writing content for HVAC Know It All. So writing articles. I just started doing like a newsletter contribution. And yeah, just looking for something as a main job or a full time that's a fit for me. So interviewing for a couple things that I'm in interest of. I don't know when this is going to come out, but yeah, so that's where I'm at right now. And it's nice to have kind of different parts of the industry available to you and have good networks and stuff like that with Jake and some nice people around. So it's a good trade.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. I know, we've been friends since before high school. You know, playing football
Oh,
and
I'm a football, yeah.
and
I forgot. Oh yeah, I gotta tell a football story. Sorry.
all the time that Julian knocked me out.
That's the whole story. It was a practice. The team. I had a size advantage on Jake. It
I
wasn't that
uh,
impressive.
I was always very tiny. I was probably like 4'8", 100 pounds, and Julian was a little bit taller, and
Yeah,
um, he was a
heavier.
good linebacker, and I was a wide receiver. So he uh, he clobbered me one day and took me out, and that was kind of the end of my football career. I'm like, no, I'm too tiny for this. And actually, through high school,
After that year.
I sprouted up pretty good through high school, and
Yeah.
now I'm an average size adult. But yeah, I was pretty tiny back then. So me and Julian go way back to rec football, and we were in a band together
Yeah.
for many years.
That's it.
Shout out
Tom
to Tom
Skull.
Skull.
Shout out.
We're
That's
on
it.
YouTube, so check us out.
True. Many, many
Many
things.
years ago,
Yeah. Lots of stuff.
and actually, I want to give one more shout out to
Yeah.
Julian's current band that we use the audio for the
Oh yeah.
podcast here. We haven't even really talked about that yet, but the intro song is one of Julian's songs, and he's got Dan Lapp is in the band as well, and
Yeah.
producer and all that. Their band's called Wasting Paper, and the song's Living in the Rain. So they're out on YouTube, or they're on Apple Music, all the platforms, I think. But
Yeah.
check them out because their music's awesome, and we're grateful to use the song on the intro here too. So,
Right on, man. Well, I appreciate that. And, me and Dan both have kids, so our time of being active playing music is limited, as you understand. But
oh yeah.
everything is true. And yeah, man, thanks. Anything you want to add before I close this out here, Jake?
No, I think that's a good kind of run of, our careers so far. And I'll just say, one thing, never stop learning. Always take training and, keep educating yourself. It makes your job easier because you can understand the concepts a lot better and understanding the equipment and stuff like that. And, like I said, I've been in this trade for 19 years now, starting out in high school, and I still learn something new every day. There's new technology coming out, or maybe an old term you thought you knew, you just really understand it. And yeah, it's the rewarding part of this trade is you never stop learning. So
That's it. I couldn't say it much better, man. So that's wicked. All right. So yeah, that was another episode of the Push Pull podcast. I'm gonna close this out. So thanks, Jake, for everything that you had to add into our HVAC journey.
thanks, man.
Yeah, and then yeah, and I'm Julian. So we'll see y'all guys next time on the Push Pull podcast. Peace.
Peace out.